Welcome again. This is Isaac Mirori again, and welcome back. I'm in a very cold place, a place that the colonialists called Aberdare Ranges. But our four parents, our pater familia, called this place Nyandarua. Nyandarua means a covering, all right, because the ranges are covered by clouds, and they are part of the highlands that leads up to Mount Kenya. And so Nyandarua is a food basket for Kenya in terms of horticulture and so on and so forth. Nyandarua also means almost like a clock, or the Superman cover that he wears. Yes, the old men and women of those olden times, once you reach a certain stage in life of respect, you would earn your own Ndarua. So Ndarua is the court or the clock, whatever, depends which English you're conversant with. And this was basically for protecting you from rain and cold seasons, now that you are old and frail. And so it was a good system, while the young people were strong, did not wear that one. And so they likened the covering up with the Ndarua, or the coat, with how the clouds cover up the ranges. Just like Mount Kenya, which was named Kenya by the colonialists, it was called Kirinyaga. Kirinyaga means one that has snow. So Nyaga in the Central Kenya dialect and languages means an ostrich. So the way an ostrich is decorated, it has black and some white patterns. They likened the mountain with an ostrich. And so that whitish decoration is what gave ostrich its identity, and also the mountain. Fortunately or unfortunately, the northeastern or eastern dialects and languages do not have R, and so they were the first people to encounter the white guys from Mombasa. And because the mountain was visible from also eastern, so because of the butter trade, they had interacted with guys from Central Kenya, and they had understood that the mountain is called Kirinyaga, but because they don't have R, they said Kinya. And so when history was recorded, it was recorded like so, that the mountain is called Kinya. And so this became the country of Mount Kenya. That's why we are called Kenya. Now, I want to bring you up to speed with some of the agendas that happened 2 days ago On 10th of November, it was the Youth Day. And on 11th was the Politicians' Day. But also in between, there was the Day for Scientists. And so there are those people who have been given privileges to discuss and give their opinion on the climate change. But the youth thing is just another joyride, and for real, because sometimes back there was a youth conference on environment in New York, and people were given green cards or green tickets. One, no youth can afford if you're not employed from the developing countries, and so they had their own way of how to make sure that youth from the African countries get their own green ticket for them to attend. Very little empowerment among the developing country youths. And so my worry is whether there is equity in giving or equality in these opportunities, and also in sharing information. So most of the time, African youths and African leaders may only share their miseries, what they're going through, and sometimes it is not really related to climate change, but it's part of a bad political and economical system that are suffering the monkey see, monkey do phenomenon. And so some of the agendas that has been taking place at COP27 in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt, which I said it's not an African COP. With all due respect, it does not represent African situation. It is only hosted in Africa, but it's still subjective towards Africans. And so they're talking about the climate finance in a polycrisis. Now, I wanted to talk about this crisis. Already, I like the word crisis, but this crisis is for sure not one-dimensional, so it is multi-dimensional. And so it is true that the financing that are supposed to be sourced or mobilized is for poly or multi-crisis. Later in probably the next, after the break, in the next segment, I'll probably talk about how wind has been affected. But there is something that I would like to urge environmentalists and people who care for the environment not to use the word threat, because threat means that the effects have not yet taken place, but there is a lot of effects and people are suffering, and so there is no climate threat or human life threat caused by climate change and global warming, the warming of the sea, the rising of the sea level. They are no longer a threat. They are causing destruction. And so another thing that they are talking about is mobilizing finance for climate action and also for implementation at the summit. And I think whenever we talk about financing and mobilizing finance, remember we are mobilizing money that has been proceeded from industrial activities. And the ripple effect of this is whenever an industrialist gives money, they feel obligated to continue with their industrialization simply because they are able to fund the greening movement and the new green normal living. Remember, even the green equipments like the solar panels, the electric vehicles, they still take a process that we are condemning as environmentalists. They still take a process of the normal industrialization, from sourcing materials which are mined to processing the raw materials into finished products. Fossil fuel or the cheap oil is used. And so how do you tell them to reduce, while also the solution that we are offering depends on the industrial processes? And so this financing really needs to be looked at and relooked keenly so that we may be able to free ourselves from what we have decided is the cause of our misery. Well, for me, I think the bottom-up economic approach may be the solution, but let it not be that now the people at the bottom are being rewarded, or they have stopped being part of the menu, but now they are part of the discussion on the table. All right. It is high time that Kenya leads the world by empowering the people at the bottom of the pyramid so that they may be able to change the economic arrangements. But unfortunately, the people who want to empower the people at the bottom of the pyramid are the people at the top of the pyramid, the people who have benefited and they are quote unquote successful. How will they let go of what they know works best for them? There's a lot of quagmire which we are supposed to deal with and elucidate so that we may be able to move forward as humanity. And that's why I always say there is nothing better like going back to the basics. That is the only place we can get solutions. This house of cards that has been built for the last 200, 300 years or 500 years can no longer go further up. The cards that are below are wobbling. And a wave is coming that the economic system and the political system are failing. And the best place to start for Africa is to make sure that we change our syllabus and make education free up to undergraduate. The idea of running our universities on a very expensive budget should end. And I'm sure once people are empowered to get education, and not education that subjects them to employment, but empowers them to create opportunities, with accessible credit, or at least every family to be empowered, at least to own a land. It's still an economical factor that can work wonders. I believe new towns, new cities are going to come up within no time, and the people are going to make a very formidable decision, and a credible one, in as far as green movement is concerned. The people who are not able to make it into the pyramid of industrialized economy and modern economy are angry enough to carve their own way of making it. I will tell you for a fact, people who are employed in Kenya are not 10% of the population. But the people who are self-employed in Kenya are the vast majority in Kenya. They have not been able to be absorbed in the tax regime, but they feed their families. They give a decent living for their families. They educate their children even if education is not working anymore, or it's not a key to success, or it does not guarantee you employment, but they still do it. This is the great revolution that I and another environmentalist called Prince and Thomas call home economy. I adopted this from this model from him. He's a great guy. Another item that they're discussing is reducing the cost of green borrowing. And I told you, these green ticket, green money, green funding, those are just semantics. They are not going to be cheaper because they still use the same model of industrialized world. They still use the economic gains of the industrialization and how to cut ourselves away from the greenback and other proceeds of industrialization is still a wonder. For me, let us not put money ahead. It's like putting a cart before a horse. Do away with financing and all these things. Make useless the current economy, and you'll make useless of the greenback and other financial mediums. Other currencies are going to be useless. If these environmentalists and people who are proposing for lifestyle change and doing away with cheap oil, fossil fuel, if they are serious enough, they will have supported Bitcoin and other e-currencies. But none of them think that is important, because we are all still part of the system. And so you cannot fight a system that you are in or within. The final item they're talking about is the CFI, which they say it is towards the green hydrogen economy. We will have another segment where we'll talk about hydrogen economy. It's the new in thing. But what among these topics, what has really again made me furious is the African segment of the item, whereby Africans are supposed to be led from need to access. And of course, it is accessing this money. Like I said in my earlier podcast, accessing this green funding has been a miserable journey for developed countries because they say you must have a bankable idea or innovation. Well, it still does not empower Africans. We are not well fed. We have not fed ourselves well enough to start thinking about innovations. We're still grappling with basic needs. And so this is the inequality that we are facing. They're also talking about mobilizing finances for climate smart connecting infrastructures, whatever that means. There is a guidebook that is going to come out that deals with financing, and it has been called the Sharm el Sheikh Financing Guidebook. I'm looking forward to seeing this guidebook. And finally, on the African segment, on the arrangement and rearrangement, it is channeling investments to green projects. And this is where they talk about the voice of Africans. Like I say, the African voice will always bring out the plight of Africans, which is not necessarily a consequence of climate change, but it's part of it when you look at the whole picture. Thank you so much and see you soon. Have a great one.